So, in this segment, we're going to be talking about the UK firms begging the government to allow prisoners to start doing the jobs that EU citizens aren't here to do anymore. Regards to meat processing, there's a few more, but this one would be the one of the ones they'll definitely need people to come in to do because it's a very difficult job for low pay. So for those people, the Lexiteers who thought, oh yeah, wages are going to go up in these industries, nah mate, not that likely. They're bringing prisoners in to do these jobs, and you know what? These prisoners won't make a lot of money from doing this. They could easily do it like how the Americans do it, where they get paid like $2 an hour or something, and this might impact more people within the space because if firms though they can get rid of people and just start hiring prisoners because they're cheaper, they're going to start doing that, and so this will further cause problems in supply chains and with people, with workers in general. Because if they do that, where they start firing people and hiring ex-cons on the cheap, they'll do it. They don't care. Desperate food manufacturers are pleading with the government to be able to call upon prisoners to solve the labour crisis blamed on the double blow of Brexit and COVID. Again, how many European countries are facing meat processing problems? Not many, not that I've heard of. The Association of Independent Meat Suppliers, which represents butchers, abattoirs and processors, said it had a call with the Ministry of Justice on Monday that would explore how its members could recruit more inmates and ex-offenders, because it is notoriously difficult to get a job if you're an ex-offender, especially depending on the crime that you've done. To fill vacancies, companies are trying to draft in prisoners via a scheme that allows inmates to undertake paid work on day release. The question I ask is, are they paid, the wages that the other people doing those jobs are paid? Because they will have to be monitored, some of these prisoners, and that does come at a cost. They are also contacting charities for ex-servicemen and women to try and drum up staff, because that's how desperate they are to get people in to do these jobs that British people typically don't want to do. Tony Gudger of the Meat Suppliers Association said some of its members already had inmates on release on temporary licence programme working for them and found them to be an asset. Is it because you can pay them less? It's also been in contact with the Career Transformation Partnership, which helps former service personnel into work and has been able to point to some of them to members with jobs vacancies. However, the number are very low. I can imagine if you're a former veteran, why the hell would you want to work in a meat processing plant? Seems a bit odd. Much of the food industry is facing a recruitment crisis, said Gudger. The advice we have received from the Home Office is that the UK's domestic labour force should take priority. I mean, they are trying. They are trying to do that. It's just there aren't enough people that want to do those jobs, which means there's a shortage. Like, the government's excuse of, just hire British people, it's not working, guys. Like, you've got to come up with a better solution than, hire British people to do British jobs. Or, why don't you ask the unemployed? It's like, the unemployed aren't always where the employment is. However hard we and many others members have tried, staffing remains a challenge because there aren't enough British people here to do it. Gudger said last week he had contacted HMP Hollisley Bay in Suffolk, but the rehabilitation officer said there had been such a big demand for inmates, we've reached our quota and we're not allowed to let any more go. I mean, I don't know what the quota would be. Could you say around 10 to 20%? But these companies are so desperate, like, have you got any inmates we can use? It's like, nah, bro, we fulfilled our quota. It's like, damn, no one's going to do this work. That's how bad the situation is. And I do wonder how much meat processors have increased their wages in order to get more people in. But I would wager they haven't done that much to try and increase, working standards and wages. They thought, we'll go to the prisoners first. Yeah. The BPMA, whose membership includes the UK processing company, said businesses were leaving no stone unturned to find workers, including contacting prison staff. Have you tried increasing wages? The worker shortage is having a knock-on effect on the hospitality trade, which is struggling to recruit enough staff, and absences caused by the Rona or the need to isolate. Obviously, the pandemic is to blame for all of these problems. It's not Brexit at all. Last week, Nando's had to close a tenth of its restaurants due to a shortage of chicken, and that's most likely it's either due to not being able to transport the chicken from the processing plant to Nando's, or you don't have enough people to process the meat, and that causes a different kind of shortage. The British Poultry Council warned 1 in 6 jobs, nearly 7,000 roles, were unfilled as a result of EU workers returning home, and that the situation could hit the supply of turkey this Christmas. The BPMA also said has also more than 10,000 vacancies to fill, and that's a lot of people. Where if those jobs aren't filled, it means production is much lower, which again causes a scarcity when it comes to supply, artificially increasing the price, which is a problem for consumers, especially because inflation is pretty bad this year. I think it's around over 3%, and wages aren't keeping up pace. The UK faced a shortfall of 90,000 HGV drivers. I mean, again, it depends who you ask. It looks like it's between 90,000 and 100,000, depending on if you ask the Road Haulage Association or the BRC in this case. Not great news though, either way. So far, disruption has been minimal thanks to the incredible work by retailers and their suppliers. Retailers are increasing pay rates, offering bonuses, introducing new driving schemes, as well as directly supporting suppliers in the movement of goods. But the government will need to play its part. I mean, they are trying, but we are still seeing shortages, so industry cannot solve this alone. The government has to be flexible here. Even with the increased use of prisoners, once Christmas starts kicking in, and the bad weather comes in especially, you're going to face more problems. A Ministry of Injustice spokesperson said, helping prisoners find jobs during their sentence and after their release makes it much more likely they will reoffend. That's a very non-conservative approach to look at things. We will support industries, blah, 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 and are working towards bringing levels of release back up towards pre-pandemic levels. But the thing is, they're already maxing out quotas. A lot of these companies are maxing out quotas of workers that prisoners that are available. Even, the Times has covered this, saying food manufacturers are scrambling to recruit prisoners to help ease desperate shortage of workers caused by the Rona and Brexit, when we know that Brexit was the most likely cause of this. We did see problems within, I think, Germany last year when it came to meat processing, but that was down to the fact that COVID spread very easily in these factories, which were, severely had severely bad working standards, and that was something I think Angela Merkel actually talked about reforming. Don't know if she did it, but that was an issue in Germany. But it was an issue in the UK as well. But now suddenly there's a massive shortage of workers. We didn't hear about this too much last year, which tells you that it wasn't down to COVID, it was down to Brexit. A lack of HGV drivers, fruit pickers and factory workers have left some supermarkets struggling to keep shelves filled, with everything from fruit and vegetables to bottled water, wine and baked goods severely depleted in parts of the country, which, when you see multiple industries hit like this, it tells you the most likely cause is down to the HGV driver shortage. Prisoners took part in 58,752 days of work-related release between October and March, and that will be set to go up. Especially because we're desperate. The government are desperate industries are desperate to fill these roles, these vacancies, and clearly, if they haven't tried increasing wages, maybe try that, and if that doesn't even work, then that the main problem is a lack of supply with workers, and the only way you're going to solve that is with freedom of movement. But, as the government keeps saying, the British people voted to end freedom of movement, so congratulations guys, you played yourselves. In July, there was an estimated 1 million jobs vacancies, a record high, as many businesses struggled to find workers when they reopened after lockdown. Again, it's not as simple as just increasing wages, because some of these job shortages are in skilled industries, sous chefs, head chefs, maitre d's, all of these sorts of people, and you can't just increase their wages to, poach them off other companies. Because eventually they'll hit a ceiling where they can't afford to, keep increasing wages. What you really need is better training, but also you need to allow EU staff to come here and, make it worth their while, and also tone down the xenophobia as well, because that's another reason why people don't want to come to this country, because essentially we told them to leave, and now that we're desperate, we need them to come back. We saw that in, I think it was Alabama, where they banned the use of undocumented migrants, and then the state started crumbling. Why? Because they desperately needed these people, and they had to change the rules around that. Because you need workers to come in to do the jobs that the native population typically don't want to do, especially in Britain, where certain people see themselves above doing these jobs in meat processing, which are, again, very difficult jobs to do. Natasha Finlayson, chief executive of Working Chance, a charity that helps women with convictions back into work, said that inquiries from businesses looking for workers had risen tenfold in the past 2 months. So it didn't happen over the last year. It wasn't the Rona that did this. It was down to Brexit. At first, we were bamboozled by the exponential increase in inquiries we were receiving, and then we realised it was a question of massive labour shortages across many sectors. Will you stock up early for Christmas? I'm going to press no. Most people are saying no, so a lot of people are going to face shortages. Food suppliers and processors say the shortage of staff in the food industry is due to a combination of Brexit and the Rona, which meant many EU workers left the country in spring last year and never returned. And that's not just down to the Rona, because if it was, they could have come back. They could come back now, as long as their country's on the old green list, and if as long as they pass a PCR test, they'll just have to isolate for a bit. But these people aren't going to come back. They don't feel welcome here. They don't see why they should get a visa when they can work in 27 other countries that don't, or it'd be 26 other countries that don't require a visa, that won't charge them a healthcare surcharge, etc. They feel more welcome in those other countries. So why would they pick Britain now? Especially as the pound, I don't think it's doing that great against the euro, at least not as well as it's done historically. Logistics UK said 14,000 EU HGV drivers left the UK in 2020 and only 600 had returned. I've seen a BBC figure that puts it at 25,000, but regardless, they're not coming back. Poultry factories have been hit so badly that Nando's had to close, KFC had issues, suppliers also warned turkey shortages at Christmas, Pret a Manger, the Green King pubs and Bernard Matthews factories are already higher serving prisoners or former offenders, but many food businesses are trying to do the same because there isn't that amount of labour in the country to do these jobs. Lincolnshire Food Partnership said the Lincolnshire, an area that relied heavily on EU migration, which is something we've spoken about in the past. They're an area that voted, at least Lincoln, I think the city voted for Brexit. How's that going? So the Rottle scheme, that's the getting the offenders and ex-offenders into work scheme. At the North Sea camp, a men's open prison offered an opportunity for farms after fewer EU workers, and the pandemic left a gaping hole in the number of agricultural land workers. So now they're not just trying to get them into meat processing places, but into the actual farms. And exploit the labour of these prisoners, because we don't have enough staff in this country. The EU staff aren't coming here. The food industry has called for the government to add more roles to the shortage occupation list and the seasonal agricultural worker scheme, both of which would allow businesses to recruit overseas workers. Businesses have warned that food prices will rise considerably because companies are forced to compete with each other now, but also because of the massive shortage of food already. Joe James, chief executive of the Federation of Wholesale Distributors, said any discerning shoppers can already see there's less choice available on the shelves. It won't go away until after Christmas at the earliest, unless the government intervenes. So these shortages will last potentially years, especially once the government starts doing import checks. That's going to be the thing, I think, that really breaks the system here. This will be when Bane, smashes Batman, hits him with the big knee, and tries to break his spine. That will be the moment if we start doing import checks. Butchery is one of those professions with a severe shortage. The industry said it was trying harder to recruit younger generations, and particularly young women, amid a rise of vegetarianism and veganism. But I'll tell you straight, being a butcher is very hard. It's you're not paid the most. It's a very labour-intensive job, and you have people asking you to do specific kinds of cuts, which can be annoying. But point being is that it's not a job that's glamorized in this country, and therefore people don't want to do that job. And it's a job that's a skill. It requires training. And when you give people crappy apprenticeship wages, they ain't going to want to do those jobs. So the Department of Work and Pensions said it was inviting employers from a range of sectors, including farming, to set up desks inside local job centres to recruit directly and carry out on-site interviews. That's a good thing. More and more companies should do this and should be allowed to do this. But point being that it's not enough and it's too late. The government are barely getting started, and it's already over for a lot of these places, these industries. They've already struggled so much, and the government has done very little to help them. It's game over. Especially once those import checks start happening. We'll go to our final article, which is the Daily Mail even covering it. The Daily Mail even covering it. And, it shows you how bad the situation is when even the Daily Mail are covering it. That prisons are being contacted to see if staff can be recruited. And it's not really down to the P word, is it? It's down to the B word. But yeah, a real disaster zone for Brexiteers, and especially these two Brexit backing papers, which are going to realise that, it's not so fun now, is it? Once reality kicks in and all your theories go out the window, when you started deciding to malign EU workers, how does it feel now when we're facing massive shortages? Although the owner of those papers won't care, I hope the readers do, because they're going to be hit with price increases, a lack of supply, but also an economy that's going to grow but not reach the peak that it should do, thanks to Brexit, thanks to the way they told their voters to vote. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. This video's gone on quite long. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you have shortages where you are. Support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.